how difficult and what a difficult time both New York and New Jersey have had. I call your attention to the axis. It goes up to 250,000 cases, so you can get a frame of how we're talking about some of the other metro areas. Next slide. These are the 25 metro areas, the top 25 metro areas, and you can only see the New York metro area in this slide. Again, the axis goes up to about 300,000, includes the New Jersey part of the metro area as well as part of southern Connecticut. Next slide. But if I take New York out, and the reason I wanted to do that, now the axis is 1/10 of the previous axis. So that previous axis, the previous slide, 300,000. This slide, 30,000. So that will give you a frame of reference for some of these other metros. The reason I wanted to show you this is cumulative cases, and we are still tracking very closely the issues in Chicago and Boston. But on this slide, I hope you can see the yellow line. That is Detroit. And Detroit, and this mayor of Detroit has really done an extraordinary job, and the people of Detroit have done an extraordinary job with their social distancing. The other line I want to call your attention to is the line here. This is New Orleans. And I think, frankly, I was concerned about New Orleans because they had a lot of pre-existing comorbidities. They have 2 or 3 major hospitals, but cover a very large area of geographic area. And that other blue line that you can see that's down right here, that's the Seattle line. And you can see that their response, because of the nursing home alert, they were one of the first states and the first metro areas to really move to social distancing. And so they've really never had a peak like many of the other metros. Next slide. Then I just want to take you through some of these new case graphics. That was cumulative cases. This is daily cases. And obviously there's a lot of variability in reporting, but you get a sense over time when you look at daily cases. So New Orleans is on panel on your left and Baton Rouge on your right. But you can see clearly New Orleans about a month ago, very low levels, probably less than 50 cases, large peak and spike around the beginning of April, and they have come down. And they have down to very few cases. Again, I showed you before how both their syndromic cases have come down as well as their actual number of cases. Next slide. This is Seattle. So you can see they had a much lower peak. And this is when we talk about flattening the curve. This is what flattening the curve looks like. It becomes a longer, slower decline, but it never gets very high and then goes back down. Next slide. And then this is Detroit. And we always look at the metros as a consolidated. So this is both Wayne and Oakland in Michigan. And we really want to thank the mayor for the incredible job that they have done to really ensure that everyone is receiving the adequate health care and testing. And they've done quite a good job with testing in Michigan. But all of these states, Louisiana and New York, have tested 30,000 per million inhabitants. Those are some of our highest numbers across the board. And next slide. And so the president talked about the case fatality rates, and we've lost a lot of Americans to this disease, and we pray and hope for each one of them that are in the hospitals and the excellent care. What this graph illustrates is the amazing work of the American people to really adhere to social distancing. This was nothing we had ever attempted to do as a nation, and the world hadn't attempted to do. But they were able to decrease the number of cases so that in general, most of the metro areas never had an issue of complete crisis care of all of their hospitals in a region. And so you can see our case fatality rate is about half to a third of many of the other countries.
Excuse me, does anybody really believe this number? Does anybody really believe this number?
I put China on there so you could see how basically unrealistic this could be. When highly developed healthcare delivery systems of the United Kingdom and France and Belgium and Italy and Spain with extraordinary doctors and nurses and equipment have case fatality rates in the 20s up to 45, and Belgium is extraordinarily competent healthcare delivery system, and then China at 0.33. You realize that these numbers, even then this includes the doubled number out of Wuhan. And so I want it really to put it in perspective, but I wanted you also to see how great the care has been for every American that has been hospitalized, and the extraordinary work of our doctors and nurses and our laboratorians on the front line who have been doing an excellent job. Next slide. And then we also wanted to show...
Also the number for Iran. Does anybody really believe that when you see what's going on over there? Does anybody, you put that slide back again?